This video is brought to you by Surfshark. Stick around to hear more about the special offer they're providing to the entire upper echelon community. Real estate is a game of perception. Actually, sales in general is a game of perception. Typically, you polish the car before you sell it, or you clean the couch before looking for a buyer. But real estate in particular is a complicated dance of expectation versus reality. Over the decades, all sorts of different techniques have been employed. Some of the more common ones include things like wide angle lenses or fisheye lenses sometimes, which manipulate the captured image to make spaces appear larger. Another technique, known as staging, relies on the use of beautiful furniture or wall decorations to make the property much more appealing. The idea is that buyers will look at these decadent layouts and associate them with the property itself, thereby picturing something similar if they become the owners. Obviously, none of the furniture comes with the property, but the purpose is to show potential buyers what their new home could look like, thereby making them much more likely to make the actual purchase. These techniques work, by the way. Homes with effective staging spend less time on the market and they fetch higher prices. Capturing great photographs means more initial interest, more bids, more competition, and thus higher sales price. There's a very good reason why real estate agents employ these tactics, and yet up until recently, there seemed to be a sort of line in the sand, if you will. Sure, the furniture was brought in special, the images were touched up with better visual contrast and things like that, but none of it was an actual outright lie. Exaggeration is probably accurate, but even the most prolific real estate agents were fundamentally still working with the property on hand, and thus they were selling something legitimate. Sadly, that no longer seems to be the case. As with plenty of other topics on the channel, I try to talk about various problems before they manifest fully, and this time we're talking about generative AI in real estate, because the bar for what is acceptable now when it comes to this game of perception has moved. And it's moved to a point where I'm pretty sure it's just flat out fraud. Except we don't have the laws that are necessary yet in order to stop or prosecute it. I mean, we do, but they're not enforced. I'll start with this. AI-powered virtual staging. This part honestly isn't all that bad, but one of the more logical implementations of AI in real estate is to virtually stage a potential home or apartment, thereby saving money in the process. Plenty of companies are now doing this, offering tools and services where sellers can populate their rooms with matching sofas and dining sets or touch up their pictures. But when you consider the fact that the same effects can be achieved with a little bit more money, some physical labor, and Photoshop, it doesn't seem all that bad. To be clear, some of these tools are more deceptive than others, changing the color of molding, substituting brick with other materials, visually removing cracks and stains, which is certainly not okay by itself, but again, relatively minor on the scale of real estate deception. Here's the thing though, as with any profit-driven industry, if a tool exists that can make the product more appealing, people inevitably use it in excess, and the same is true of real estate. But what happens if you take it like 3 to 5 steps further? What happens when you start using generative AI to straight up alter the property? Not to make it look better or visualizing furniture. What happens when you straight up just lie? We used to call that fraud, but now the hustle bros and the real estate sellers call it 10xing your potential. Before going further, today's video is brought to you by the longest running sponsor of the channel, and that is Surfshark. Surfshark is a VPN, virtual private network, and if you've followed the channel for any substantial period of time, you've probably heard me talk about them before, as well as the myriad benefits to using a VPN, helping prevent certain types of phishing attacks, DNS tunneling, DDoS attacks, or mitigating data tracking/harvesting practices by all sorts of tech companies, that kind of stuff. Surfshark also unlocks additional content on streaming websites by changing your geographic region. It gets around regional censorship, helps protect your IP address with encryption, modification, etc. However, they also have a brand new feature, which is email scam checking for anyone who's interested in that. They operate 4,500 servers in 140 different locations with a third-party verified public report authenticating that they also, most importantly, do not keep any logs, which is one of the critical policies that a VPN needs to have. Also, they maintain what's called a warrant canary, which doesn't mean much to most people, but if you care about that, they have it. If you click the link down below, surfshark.com/echelon, and use the code echelon at checkout, you can get 4 extra months completely for free with a special pricing offer. Again, link down below, surfshark.com/echelon, coupon code echelon at checkout for an extra 4 months of the service for free. Big thank you to Surfshark for continuing to sponsor the channel. Okay, let's just rip the band-aid off. Look at these two images. I feel like a kid at the dentist office. Find the differences in the photographs. But look at these two photos and try to spot what's different. Just to clarify, although the company has since taken it down, this was an actual listing on a real estate website. What do we see? Well, for starters, the gardens are completely changed. The left side is just a totally different thing. The window proportions and architecture have been redone. The awning is different, among other things. And I can say with total confidence right now that the line between exaggeration and flat out lie has been obliterated. How about this one? Surface level glance, it doesn't seem all that bad, but then you start to notice that there's an entire countertop and set of cabinets missing, which have been replaced by a window. Also, the floor is entirely different. Here's another one: $900 per month for a one bedroom apartment, the AI enhanced listing, and now reality. These are different images. They're not enhanced, they're lies. The fridge is gone, the entire shape of the room has been changed, the doorway on the right hand side is just not there, and the windows are new. I won't harp on individual examples for too long because there's a shit ton of them, although this one in particular is very funny. Can you spot the issue? The AC unit in the low ceiling loft, which somehow has an entire queen sized bed arrangement crammed into a tiny little 3 foot ceiling space, which is like the lowest effort deception possible. But hopefully the issue is becoming clear because real estate sellers, now given access to an unlimited supply of generative AI editing capabilities where previously they had to use Photoshop and have some sort of actual skill with a software program, that's no longer needed. They're using these features to commit fraud. But it gets worse. The interesting thing about real estate is that deceptively editing photographs almost feels like a fool's errand. At least it used to feel that way. When people set out to buy a home or rent an apartment, they're typically visiting the actual property. They're taking a tour, seeing it for themselves, like stepping into the rooms and making their decision afterward, right? They think on it for a few days or a week. That sort of deal structure has been standard basically forever, naturally mitigating the problems that occur when someone is deceptively editing the listing or the photos. That is, it was standard until COVID. During and after the COVID pandemic, there was a dramatic shift in consumer retail spending habits, which even went so far as to include car loans and real estate. According to Millennial Homebuyer Survey info in 2021, as well as data provided by Zillow, 59% of millennials are at least somewhat confident making an offer on a home that they toured virtually, but never in person. 1 year later, 2022, 90% of millennials indicated that they would buy a home sight unseen, as it's called, with various criteria, one of which, at 53%, was a pre recorded virtual tour, which would make them comfortable buying a home without ever seeing it in person. Just to be crystal clear about this, the number of people willing to buy homes without ever setting foot physically on the property is rising, and it's rising very quickly, which is where the predictive nature of this video comes into play, because with a combination of different tools, you can now, rather easily I might add, create a fake digital tour. This right here is a company called AutoReal, and it's far from the only example, which allows people to take photographs and turn them into a video. Right now, it's only short durations. You can't exactly create an in-depth, rapidly spinning video that walks with continuity throughout the entire house in one, continuous shot. But you can take a fabricated image, which was originally based on a real image, and turn that into a set of video renders, thereby creating at least a passable virtual tour. But we also need to keep in mind that any given snapshot of generative AI capability is the worst it will ever be from here forward. The ability for people to take an image, in this case a real estate photograph, and then animate that image into a moving context-aware video is only ever increasing. And if you combine this capability with a trend where more and more and more young people are willing to buy houses sight unseen, as in never physically visiting, only relying on photos and virtual tours, you wind up in a position where real estate sellers have the ability to dramatically inflate the perceived value of their property. First, you take a real photograph, pretty simple, then you plug it into one of the many AI editing programs. There's tons of them. After that, even if the entire structure of the room is now different, which obviously happens, you turn that photograph, which conveniently no longer has the scuff marks or the stains or the holes in the door frame and has a completely different countertop variation. You turn that photograph into a virtual tour, and then you put up a listing that has a genuine chance of attracting a buyer who will then commit themselves to the purchase without ever setting foot on the property. Obviously, that's the most extreme case. It is, but we also need to consider the fact that people take days off of work in order to drive out and look at different properties. Sometimes they commit to long travel distances in order to check out potential listings. So on the upside, they find out in person, wow, they're faking what the house looks like. But the inherent downside is that every single person who goes to look at this property, which could be hundreds of people or families, has had their time wasted. They may have missed out on a different property that they would have been looking at in the meantime. They wasted money on gas, they took sick leave or vacation time, and who knows whatever else, because the seller is committing fraud. I was actually shocked by the number of people commenting about this in various online forums and subreddits. It's already pervasively common to like kind of a horrifying degree, it would seem. And there do exist some potential punishments or fines that can be handed down by various departments and district attorneys' offices, but that requires an incredible amount of resources to be committed on top of someone credibly reporting this fraud to them in the first place. And the resources committed by the prosecution of this are never recouped in full afterwards. It's only a net drain on the entire industry. It's a fine line between embellishment and deception because you can make something look good in order to make it more appealing without lying. A great example would be how milk trucks are always super, super shiny and polished, which also has to do with reflecting heat. But on top of that, the shiny, polished exterior, like the mirror finish, communicates good sanitation, a sense of it being clean. You don't want to take pictures of the car that you're selling if it's covered in mud, under most circumstances anyway. And likewise, you don't want pictures of the apartment that you're renting out if there's cockroaches on the carpet. However, changing the things you can realistically change to make something more appealing to potential buyers isn't the same thing as changing the literal architecture. And yet, real estate sellers on Zillow or apartments.com or any of the major platforms are doing exactly that with no shame whatsoever. And if you ask me, there need to be much, much harsher penalties for this. Sadly, enforcement of common decency invariably lags far behind when compared to bad actors who use new systems for their own personal profit. But for the sake of raising awareness, anyone in the future that watches this video should be aware that this problem exists, okay? It's real. It's not every seller, and it's certainly not every single listing, but the mindset of scrutinizing or questioning the hyper-stylized, excessively perfected images that you see associated with real estate is a valuable mentality to have, and it genuinely may help avoid a truly unfortunate circumstance, especially as the number of people that are willing to buy houses based on virtual tours is going up super, super fast, right? In that world where the tools to fake things are accelerating faster than anything else, right? Especially the ways to try and verify what's real and what's not, and people are more likely to commit to virtual tours and buy houses based on them, yeah, you gotta question things. But anyway, that's it. If you want to support the channel, check out the links down below. The video sponsor, of course, locals and Patreon, monthly memberships, and more, but I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching. Perfectly fitting with the motto of the channel for this video. Question everything, and have a nice night.